You know that moment when your entire world shifts on its axis, and you realize nothing will ever be the same again? That happened to me on a random Tuesday in September when my best friend since college, Jake Morrison, showed up at my apartment with 3 suitcases, a broken lease agreement, and absolutely nowhere else to go. I'm Ryan Chen, 27 years old, marketing consultant by day, hopeless romantic by night. And I'd been in love with Jake for approximately 6 years, 2 months, and 14 days. Not that I was counting or anything. The thing about loving your straight best friend is that it's like living with a constant ache in your chest, when you've learned to ignore, to work around, to pretend doesn't exist. I'd mastered the art of platonic affection, of being the supportive friend without crossing any lines. I'd even dated other guys, trying desperately to move on. But then he moved in, and suddenly all those carefully constructed walls I'd built around my heart started crumbling. This is the story of how everything changed. How friendship became something more. How I learned that sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right there all along. And trust me, it got way too real. The doorbell rang at 11:47 p.m., which should have been my first warning that the universe was about to throw me a curveball. I opened the door to find Jake standing there, rain-soaked and miserable, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, those impossibly blue eyes looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. He was wearing his favorite gray hoodie, the one that somehow made his shoulders look even broader, and carrying what appeared to be his entire life in 3 overstuffed suitcases. "I know it's late," he started, his voice rough. "And I know we haven't talked much since you moved to Seattle, but get in here," I interrupted, pulling him inside before he could finish. "You're soaking wet." Jake stepped into my apartment, leaving puddles on the hardwood floor, and I tried not to notice how the rain had made his hoodie cling to his chest, outlining muscles I had no business noticing. He'd always been athletic: soccer in college, rock climbing on weekends, but somehow he looked even better now than he did back at University of Portland. "What happened?" I asked, grabbing a towel from the bathroom and tossing it to him. He caught it reflexively, that natural athlete's coordination I'd always envied. "Sarah and I broke up." Sarah, his girlfriend of 2 years. The woman I'd politely tolerated at every group gathering, the one who'd moved into his Portland apartment 6 months ago, the person who represented everything I could never be to him. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Seeing Jake hurt made my chest tight, even if a small, selfish part of me felt something else entirely. He ran the towel through his hair, making it stick up in adorable directions. "It was a long time coming. We wanted different things. She wanted to get married, have kids, the whole suburban dream. And he trailed off, staring at the floor. I realized I was trying to force something that wasn't there, trying to be someone I'm not. There was something in his tone, something I couldn't quite identify, a weight to his words that made my skin prickle with awareness. "So why Seattle?" I asked, moving to the kitchen to give myself something to do with my hands. "You could have stayed in Portland, found a new place. Because you're here." Simple words that stopped me cold. I turned to find him watching me with an intensity I'd never seen before, the towel hanging forgotten in his hands. "I needed to be somewhere that felt," he struggled for the word, "safe, real, and you've always been that for me, Ryan, my best friend, the one person who never expected me to be anything other than myself." My heart was doing acrobatics in my chest. This was exactly the kind of moment I'd fantasized about 1,000 times. Jake showing up, needing me, choosing me. But in all those fantasies, I'd conveniently ignored the reality. He was straight heartbroken and looking for a friend. "Nothing more. You can stay as long as you need," I heard myself say. "The second bedroom is basically a storage closet right now, but we can clear it out tomorrow." Relief that flooded his face was worth the emotional torment I was about to put myself through. "Thank you," he said softly. "I promise I won't be a burden. I'll pay rent, help with everything." "Jake," I cut him off. "We've been friends for almost 7 years. You could never be a burden." He smiled then, that crooked grin that had been my undoing since sophomore year, when he'd walked into our shared dorm lounge and asked if anyone wanted to grab pizza. I'd been gone for him from that moment, even if I hadn't admitted it to myself, for another year. "Missed you," he said. "Been too long since we just hung out, talked." "Well, you're stuck with me now," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Fair warning, I sing in the shower. I'm addicted to true crime podcasts, and I will judge you for your serial choices." He laughed, the sound warming something in my chest. "Still eating that gross granola. It's called being health conscious, Morrison. It's called eating bird food, Chen." And just like that, we fell back into our old rhythm, the easy banter that had always defined our friendship. For a moment, I could almost pretend this was normal, that having him here wouldn't completely wreck me, almost. Living with Jake was both better and worse than I'd imagined. Better because having him around felt natural in a way I hadn't anticipated. We fell into a routine quickly. I'd make coffee in the mornings while he showered, trying very hard not to think about him in my shower. We'd share the kitchen making breakfast, then I'd head to my home office for work while he job hunted and unpacked. Worse because every small domestic moment felt loaded with meaning I couldn't acknowledge. The way he'd brush past me in the kitchen, leaving the scent of his cologne in his wake. How he'd steal bites of my food with that mischievous grin, the same way he had in college. The sound of his laugh echoing through the apartment, making it feel more like a home than it had in the year I'd lived here. On Thursday evening, 5 days after his arrival, I came out of my office to find him attempting to cook dinner. The kitchen looked like a war zone, flour everywhere, what appeared to be the remnants of several broken eggs on the counter, and Jake standing in the middle of it all with a mixing bowl looking adorably frustrated. Making pancakes, he announced, as if that explained the devastation. At 7 p.m., breakfast for dinner is a valid choice. He pointed the whisk at me defensively. Don't judge, I laughed, moving to help him. You're lucky I like you. Here, you're mixing it too much, that's why they'll be tough. I took the bowl from him, our fingers brushing in the exchange, and tried to ignore the electricity that shot up my arm. This was the problem. Every touch, every smile, every shared moment was torture because it meant everything to me and nothing to him. You always were the better cook, Jake said, watching me work with an expression I couldn't read. You set cereal on fire once, I reminded him. The bar is underground. That was one time. And in my defense, I didn't know you couldn't microwave it. We cooked together, falling into an easy partnership, him following my instructions with exaggerated seriousness. When the pancakes were finally done, perfectly golden and fluffy, we piled them high with maple syrup and ate standing at the counter, the way we used to in our college apartment. This is nice, Jake said quietly, and there was something wistful in his voice. I forgot what it was like to just be comfortable with someone. No expectations, no trying to be what they want. What do you mean? I asked, even though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. He was quiet for a moment, pushing pancake around his plate. Sarah was great, but I always felt like I was performing, like I had to be this version of Jake that fit into her life, her plans. And after a while, I started to lose track of who I actually was underneath all that. That sounds exhausting. It was. He looked up at me, those blue eyes searching mine. But with you, I've never had to pretend. You've always just accepted me, even when I was an idiot. Especially when you were an idiot, I corrected, trying to lighten the mood before this conversation went somewhere I couldn't handle. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Can I ask you something? My stomach dropped. Sure, haven't you ever? I mean, in all the time I've known you, you've never really talked about relationships. About what you want? Because what I want is standing 3 feet away from me, completely unattainable, I thought. Out loud, I said. I guess I've been focused on other things. Career, moving to a new city. You must want someone, he pressed. Someone who gets you, who you can build a life with. Doesn't everyone? I deflected, my heart racing. This was dangerous territory. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly I almost missed it. I think I've been lying to myself for a really long time. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed loudly on the counter, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, his expression closing off. Sarah, he muttered. Third time today. You should probably talk to her, I said, even though the thought of him getting back together with her made me feel sick. Get closure at least. Yeah, he ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was stressed. Maybe tomorrow, tonight I just want to pretend the outside world doesn't exist, so we did. We demolished the rest of the pancakes, watched a terrible action movie on Netflix, and argued about plot holes and impossible physics. It was perfect and painful, and everything I'd ever wanted, wrapped up in an evening I knew I'd replay in my mind for months to come. As we cleaned up later, working in comfortable silence, Jake suddenly spoke. Thank you for this, for letting me stay, for being patient with me. I know I'm kind of a mess right now. You're not a mess, I said firmly. You're figuring things out, that's different. He smiled at me, warm and genuine. What would I do without you? Be straight and available, probably, I thought bitterly, but I just smiled back and said, let's hope you never have to find out. If I had to pinpoint when things started to change, really change, it was the following Saturday night. We'd spent the day exploring Seattle, something I'd been meaning to do more of since moving here but had never quite gotten around to. With Jake, though, everything felt like an adventure. We hit Pike Place Market, watched them throw fish, grabbed coffee at a tiny cafe tucked into a side street, and walked along the waterfront as the sun set over Puget Sound. It felt like a date. That was the problem. Every moment felt charged with possibility, even though I knew it was all in my head. By the time we got home, we were both exhausted and slightly drunk on the 2 beers we'd had at a pub near my apartment. Jake collapsed onto the couch, stretching out his long legs, and patted the cushion next to him. Come on, we're watching something terrible. Your turn to pick. I settled next to him, very aware of the heat of his body barely a foot away. Define terrible. Whatever cheesy thing you're secretly into. I know you have guilty pleasures, says the man who cried at the Notebook. It's a beautiful story, he protested. That scene at the end when he what, Jake, when they die together, you're proving my point. He shoved my shoulder playfully and I shoved back, and suddenly we were grappling like teenagers, laughing as we fought for control of the remote. He was stronger, but I was quicker, and for a moment we were tangled together, his body pressed against mine, his breath hot on my neck. Then we both froze. The laughter died away, replaced by a tension so thick I could barely breathe. Jake was practically on top of me, his face inches from mine, and I could see the exact moment something shifted in his eyes. Ryan, he said, and my name had never sounded like that before, rough and wanting and uncertain all at once. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at him as the world narrowed down to this single moment. I need to tell you something, he said softly. Something I've been trying to figure out how to say since I got here. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. Okay, he sat back, putting distance between us, and I immediately missed his warmth. His hands were shaking slightly as he ran them through his hair. When Sarah and I broke up, it wasn't just because we wanted different things, he began, not looking at me. It was because I couldn't stop thinking about someone else. Someone who's been in my life for years, who I kept telling myself I felt a certain way about because that's what made sense, what was safe. Room tilted. This couldn't be happening, this wasn't real. Jake, let me finish, he interrupted, his voice strained. Please, because if I don't say this now I might never have the courage again. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Spent the last 6 months feeling like I was going crazy, he continued. Wondering why I'd rather talk to you than my girlfriend. Why I'd find excuses to bring you up in conversation. Why I'd check my phone, constantly hoping you texted, and feel disappointed when it was anyone else. He finally looked at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes made my chest ache. And then Sarah said something that made it all click. She said, "You talk about Ryan the way I wish you'd talk about me." And she was right, because somewhere along the way you stopped being just my best friend and became more, so much more. I couldn't breathe. This was every fantasy I'd ever had, but hearing it in reality was terrifying. I know I'm probably screwing everything up right now, Jake said, his words tumbling out faster. I know you might not feel the same way, and if you don't, we can pretend this never happened. But I had to tell you because pretending I don't feel this way is killing me, Ryan. Living here with you, being close to you, it's made me realize what I want, who I want. Jake, my voice came out hoarse. You're straight. He laughed, but it sounded pained. Am I? Because I can't stop thinking about kissing you, about what it would be like to hold you. He cut himself off, shaking his head. Maybe I was never straight, maybe I was just too scared to admit what I was feeling, or maybe it's just you, maybe you're the exception to everything I thought I knew about myself. This is insane, I whispered. I know, you just got out of a relationship. I know, this could ruin everything between us. I know. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand. His fingers were warm, trembling slightly. But I'm tired of running from this, from you, from what we could be. Stared at our joined hands, my mind racing. This was everything I'd ever wanted, but the timing was terrible and the risks were enormous. If this went wrong, I'd lose my best friend. But if I said no, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Been in love with you since sophomore year, I found myself saying. When you walked into that dorm lounge looking for pizza and you had this smile, and I knew you'd be important to me. I just never imagined that I'd feel the same way. Jake finished softly. My best friend, I said, my throat tight. I can't lose you, you won't. He squeezed my hand. No matter what happens, you won't lose me, but I need to know if you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling right now. Because Ryan, I am terrified and exhilarated and I can't think straight. He laughed at his own unintentional pun. I literally can't think straight when I'm around you. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once. Jake was still holding my hand, his thumb tracing absent circles on my palm, and every nerve in my body was screaming at me to close the distance between us. Ask me, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper, his brow furrowed. Ask you what? What you want to ask me, what you've been building up to. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked like fear and hope mixed together. He shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup my jaw, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. Can I kiss you? He asked, so quietly I felt the words more than heard them. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. In some versions I was smooth and confident, in others it was dramatic, movie perfect. But reality was better than any fantasy because it was real. Jake's hand trembling slightly against my face, his breath quickening, the way his eyes kept dropping to my lips then back up like he was memorizing every detail. Yes, I breathed. He kissed me like he was afraid I'd disappear, gentle and hesitant at first, barely a brush of lips. Then I made a small sound in the back of my throat, and whatever restraint he'd been holding onto shattered. He kissed me deeper, his hand sliding into my hair, pulling me closer as 6 years of longing poured into that single point of contact. I'd kissed people before. I'd had relationships, encounters, moments, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to kissing Jake Morrison. Maybe because I'd wanted it for so long, or maybe because it was him, but every nerve ending in my body was on fire and I couldn't get close enough. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, and I could feel him smiling against my lips. That was, he started. Yeah, I agreed. Not needing him to finish. Never. He pulled back slightly to look at me, wonder written across his face. I didn't know it could feel like this. My heart did a complicated flip. Jake, we need to talk about this, really talk, because this isn't just a kiss. This is everything, he finished. I know, and I know the timing is terrible, and I know I'm figuring myself out, and I know this is probably moving too fast, but Ryan. He took my face in both hands, his gaze intense. I have never been more sure of anything in my life than I am about wanting to be with you. You've been out of a relationship for exactly 2 weeks, I pointed out, trying to be the rational one even as my heart was singing. You're going through a lot of changes. What if this is just confusion, rebound feelings? Is that what you think this is? He asked, and there was hurt in his voice. I don't know what to think, I admitted. I want this, God, Jake, I want this more than you can imagine. But I need to know you're sure that this isn't just you processing your breakup or figuring out your sexuality, because I can't be your experiment. He flinched like I'd struck him, then nodded slowly. You're right, that's fair. He pulled back, putting space between us, and I immediately wanted to take the words back. I can't prove to you that this is real except with time, so what if we take it slow, figure this out together? What does that look like? I asked. I don't know, he admitted with a crooked smile. I've never done this before, dated a guy, dated my best friend, but I know I don't want to go back to pretending there's nothing between us. So maybe we go on dates, talk about what we're feeling, see where this goes without rushing. It was more mature than I'd expected, more thoughtful. Okay, I said, but Jake, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If you realize this isn't what you want, if you figure out you're not actually into guys or you're not ready for this, you have to tell me. Immediately, don't string me along trying to figure it out, because I'm already in this heart first. I have been for years, and I need to know you'll be honest with me. I promise, he said solemnly. Complete honesty even when it's hard. He reached for my hand again, tentatively. Can I still hold your hand, or is that against the taking it slow rules? I laced my fingers through his, marveling at how right it felt. Handholding is definitely allowed. We sat like that for a while, just holding hands on the couch, processing what had just happened. Outside, Seattle city lights twinkled through the window, and I could hear the distant sound of traffic. Everything felt surreal, like I'd wake up any moment to find it had all been a dream. What are you thinking? Jake asked softly. That I'm terrified, I admitted, and happy and still kind of waiting for someone to pinch me. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that made my breath catch. Me too, on all counts. He hesitated, then added, Can I ask you something? Always. When did you know that you had feelings for me? I smiled at the memory. Remember sophomore year, that party at Delta Tau where you got into a debate about whether Han Solo shot first? I stand by my position, he interjected. You were so passionate about it, I continued. And you were drinking that terrible beer and your shirt was rumpled and you had this light in your eyes like the fate of the universe depended on winning this argument. And I just looked at you and thought, oh no, I'm in love with my straight best friend. Han did shoot first, he said seriously, then grinned. And for the record, I wasn't as straight as you thought. Could have fooled me. You dated exclusively women. Because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, he said quietly. And because admitting I might be attracted to guys felt too big, too scary. Easier to just not think about it. He met my eyes. But then you moved to Seattle and suddenly you weren't around all the time and I realized how much I missed you. Not just as a friend. I'd find myself looking at your Instagram at 2 in the morning, reading our old text conversations, making excuses to call you. Didn't you say something? Because I thought I was losing my mind, he said with a self-deprecating laugh. I kept telling myself it was normal to miss your best friend, that thinking about him constantly was just friendship, that wanting to touch him, to be near him was just, I don't know, bromance or whatever. Bromance, I repeated, amused despite myself. Shut up, he said, but he was smiling. I was in denial, deep, deep denial, and then Sarah called me out and I couldn't hide from it anymore. How did she know? I said your name during sex. I choked on air. You what? His face flushed red. It was once, and it just slipped out and she stopped everything and just looked at me and I knew we both knew it was over because you can't build a life with someone when you're in love with someone else. Weight of those words settled over us. He was in love with me. Jake Morrison, my best friend of 7 years, the guy I'd pined after through countless girlfriends and heartbreaks and late-night conversations, was in love with me. Something, he prompted when I'd been quiet too long. Processing, I managed. This is a lot, much, no, I squeezed his hand. Just a lot, good lot, great lot, best lot ever. He laughed, the sound filling the apartment with warmth. You're babbling, you make me babble. I know. He grinned, then grew serious again. So this taking it slow thing, what are the rules? I don't know, I admitted. I've never done this before either. Figure it out together. Together, I agreed. We decided to treat the following evening like a proper first date, which felt both absurd and necessary given the circumstances. Jake disappeared into his room for an hour to get ready, leaving me packing my own room trying to figure out what one wears when dating their roommate. I settled on dark jeans and a button-up shirt, dressy but not trying too hard, and spent an embarrassing amount of time on my hair. When I emerged from my room at 7, Jake was already waiting in the living room and my breath caught. He dressed up too, wearing slacks and a deep blue shirt that matched his eyes, his hair styled instead of in its usual casual mess. He looked nervous and excited and impossibly handsome, and I had to remind myself that this was real, that he was getting dressed up for me. You look amazing, he said, his eyes roaming over me with an appreciation that made my skin heat. So do you? I managed. So this is weird, right? He asked with a slightly hysterical laugh. Going on a date with someone you live with. Completely weird, I agreed, and also kind of perfect. His smile softened. Yeah, perfect. We'd decided on dinner at a small Italian place in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood known for being LGBTQ plus friendly. I'd suggested it partly for the atmosphere, partly because I wasn't sure how Jake would feel about being visibly on a date with another guy in a less accepting space. As we walked to the restaurant, Jake insisted on walking even though it was drizzling because that's what you do on dates in Seattle. He reached for my hand. The gesture was tentative, like he was still testing boundaries, but when I laced my fingers through his, he grinned like I'd given him the world. Is this okay? He asked, holding hands in public. Is it okay with you? I countered. I asked you first. Jake, I've been out since college. I'm comfortable holding hands with a guy in public. The question is whether you're comfortable doing it. He was quiet for a moment and I could practically see him processing, then he squeezed my hand tighter. "I'm nervous," he admitted, "but not because I'm ashamed or worried about what people think, more like, this is new and I'm still figuring out how to exist in the world like this." "That's fair," I said, "and if at any point you're uncomfortable, just tell me." "I will," he bumped his shoulder against mine, "but right now I'm just happy to be here with you." The restaurant was cozy and dimly lit, with candles on every table and soft Italian music playing in the background. We were seated in a corner booth which felt intimate and private despite the other diners around us. "This place is great," Jake said, looking around. "How'd you find it?" "Online recommendation," I said. "I've been meaning to try it." "So I'm your excuse to finally go to the romantic Italian place you've been eyeing." "Exactly." He grinned. "I'll take it." We ordered wine and pasta, falling into easy conversation about work, Seattle, anything and everything. But there was a new dimension to it now, an undercurrent of awareness that hadn't been there before or had been there but unacknowledged. The way his eyes would linger on my face, how our feet would brush under the table, the smiles that lasted a beat too long. "Can I ask you something potentially awkward?" Jake said as we waited for our food. "Oh boy. What's it like, dating guys? I know that's a weird question, but I genuinely don't know what I'm doing here." I considered how to answer. "Dating guys isn't fundamentally different from dating women," I said. "You're still getting to know someone, figuring out compatibility, navigating feelings. The mechanics might be different, but the core of it, wanting to connect with someone, to be seen and understood, that's universal." "That makes sense," he paused. "What about the other stuff?" "You're going to have to be more specific." His face flushed. "Intimacy, physical stuff." My own face heated. "We're taking it slow, remember." I know, I'm not trying to rush anything, I'm just curious and nervous, and I have no idea what I'm doing." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "Neither did I the first time, no one does. You figure it out together, communicate, learn what works. It's not about having all the answers, it's about being willing to explore." "With you," he said, his eyes intense. "I want to explore all of it with you." My heart hammered against my ribs. "When we're both ready." "When we're both ready," he agreed. Our food arrived, giving us something to focus on besides the tension crackling between us. The pasta was incredible, rich and perfectly seasoned, and we shared bites off each other's plates, the gesture feeling both familiar and new in this context. "This is the best first date I've ever been on," Jake said suddenly. "Yes." "Yeah," he smiled at me, soft and genuine. "Because it's with you, because I don't have to pretend or perform or be anyone other than exactly who I am, even if who I am is still kind of a mystery." "You're Jake," I said simply. "My best friend, the guy who cried at the notebook and can't cook to save his life and argues about Star Wars with the passion of a religious zealot. That's who you are, the rest is just details we'll figure out." "Just details," he repeated, but he looked relieved. After dinner, we walked through Capitol Hill, exploring the neighborhood as the drizzle turned into proper Seattle rain. Jake pulled me under an awning outside a closed bookstore, both of us laughing as we shook water from our hair. "We should head back," I said, but neither of us moved. "In a minute," Jake said. He was standing close, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I want to remember this, our first date, the rain, you." "It's just me," I said, suddenly self-conscious. "Same guy you've known for years." "No," he said softly, "you're not just anything, you're everything." Then he kissed me again, right there under the awning in the rain, and this kiss was different from the first, less desperate, more certain. Like he was claiming this, us making a choice with every press of his lips against mine. When we finally pulled apart, we were both grinning like idiots. "Come on," I said, tugging him back into the rain. "Let's go home." The next 2 weeks were some of the happiest of my life. Jake and I fell into a new rhythm that was part friendship, part relationship, wholly us. We'd have breakfast together before I started work, steal kisses in the kitchen, spend evenings curled up on the couch watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. But the outside world had a way of intruding on our bubble. It started with Sarah. She'd been texting Jake sporadically, asking to talk, to get closure. He'd been avoiding it, not wanting to deal with the messiness of his past while navigating his present. but finally she showed up at the apartment. I answered the door to find her standing there, petite and pretty with auburn hair and shrewd eyes that immediately assessed me with new understanding. "You must be Ryan," she said, and there was no hostility in her voice, just resignation. "The famous best friend." "Hi Sarah," I kept my tone neutral. "Jake's here, I'll get him." "Actually," she said, "can we talk just for a minute?" I hesitated, then stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What's up?" "I'm not here to cause problems," she said. I need to say something and then I'll leave Jake alone, okay?" "Okay." "I knew," she said simply. "About you, about how he felt. I knew probably before he did, the way he'd light up when you called, how he'd compare me to you without even realizing it. I kept thinking if I was patient, if I loved him enough, he'd choose me." She laughed bitterly. "But you can't compete with someone's soulmate." The word hit me like a physical blow. Soulmate, was that what we were? "I'm not trying to make you feel guilty," she continued. "You didn't do anything wrong, neither did Jake really. You can't help who you love. I just wanted you to know that when you're with him, when you're building whatever this is, you're getting someone who loves completely, who's loyal and kind and sometimes oblivious to what's right in front of him." She smiled, sad but genuine. "Take care of him. He's going to need someone patient while he figures himself out." "I will," I promised, throat tight. She nodded, then turned to leave. At the stairs, she paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it's you. I'm glad he finally figured it out." I watched her go, feeling a complicated mix of guilt and gratitude and something like grief for the pain we'd inadvertently caused. When I went back inside, Jake was waiting, anxiety written across his face. "She came to say goodbye," I said, "and to tell me to take care of you." "Ryan's. She's a good person," I interrupted. "You chose well, even if it wasn't right for you in the end." He pulled me into his arms and I let myself be held, let myself take comfort in his solidity. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked quietly. "Moving this fast, jumping into this?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I know I don't want to stop." "Me neither." The second complication came in the form of my mother's weekly phone call. She'd been pestering me about my love life for months, convinced I was lonely in Seattle and I'd been deflecting. But this time, buoyed by happiness, I made a mistake. "I'm actually seeing someone," I said before I could think better of it. "Really?" Her voice lit up with excitement. "Tell me everything. What's her name? What does she do?" "It's complicated, Mom." "Complicated how? Is she married?" "Ryan Chen, tell me you're not." "Mom, it's not a she, it's a he. His name is Jake and he's my best friend from college." The line went silent. Then, "Jake Morrison, the boy who called you at 3 a.m. that time about the physics exam." "That's him." "But I thought he was straight. He had that girlfriend, the one you said was." "He's figuring things out," I interrupted. "We both are, it's new." Another long pause. My mother wasn't homophobic, she'd been supportive when I came out, but she was protective and I could practically hear her processing this. "Are you happy?" she asked finally. "Really happy." "Then I'm happy for you." Then, more seriously, "But Ryan, be careful. Sometimes when someone is figuring out their sexuality, there can be confusion, hearts get broken. I don't want yours to be one of them." "I know, Mom." "Does he know how you felt about him all these years?" "Yeah, we've talked about it." "Good, communication is important," she sighed. "I want to meet him properly, this Jake who's finally gotten his head out of his ass." I laughed despite myself. "Mom." "What? 7 years, Ryan, 7 years you've been pinning. If he breaks your heart now, I'm driving to Seattle and having words." "I'll keep that in mind." After we hung up, I found Jake in his room, video calling with his own parents. I waved and started to leave, but he gestured for me to stay. "Met someone," he was saying, "someone important, someone I should have figured out my feelings for a long time ago." I could hear his mother's excited response through the phone, then his father's deeper voice asking questions. "His name is Ryan," Jake said, looking directly at me, "and I'm really lucky he's willing to take a chance on me." My heart swelled to impossible sizes. Later, as we lay in his bed, we'd progressed to sleeping in the same room, though nothing more than kissing and holding each other. He turned to face me in the darkness. "My parents want to meet you," he said. "Well, meet you as my boyfriend, not just my friend." "Boyfriend," I tested the word. "Is that what we are? What else would we be?" "I don't know, we never really defined it." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me in the dim light filtering through the window. Ryan Chen, will you be my boyfriend? That's the worst proposal I've ever heard, I teased. I'll do better next time, he promised, but for now just say yes. Yes, I said, pulling him down for a kiss, obviously yes. 3 weeks into officially being boyfriends, we hit our first real snag. It started innocuously enough. Jake came home from a job interview looking troubled. How'd it go? I asked from the kitchen where I was making dinner. Good, I think they want to do a second interview. He dropped his messenger bag by the door, then paused. They asked about my living situation, where I was living, who with. Okay, I sensed there was more. I said I was staying with a friend. He ran a hand through his hair, that telltale stress gesture. I didn't mention you were my boyfriend. My hand stilled on the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. Why not? Because I didn't know if it would hurt my chances, he said defensively. It's a pretty conservative company and I really need this job and I panicked. I set the knife down carefully. So you're going to stay closeted at work? I didn't say that. But you're thinking it. Ryan, don't. He sounded tired. It's not that simple. You've been out for years, you have an established career, connections, you work remotely so you don't have to deal with office politics. I'm starting from scratch in a new city. So you're going to hide who you are, I said flatly. I'm going to be strategic, he shot back. There's a difference. Is there? We stared at each other across the kitchen island, and I could see the moment his frustration matched mine. You know what, maybe there is a difference between us, he said, his voice rising. You've had years to figure this out, to be comfortable with your sexuality. I've had 3 weeks, Ryan, 3 weeks of knowing I'm into guys, 3 weeks of being in my first real relationship with a man, and you're already judging me for not being as out and proud as you. That's not what I'm doing, I protested, but even as I said it I realized he had a point. I just don't want you to hide us. I'm not hiding us, I'm just navigating. He sagged against the counter. Can you try to understand that this is hard for me, that I'm still figuring out how to exist in the world like this? Guilt washed over me. He was right. I'd had the luxury of time, of coming out in college when the stakes felt lower, of building a career in a field that was relatively accepting. Jake was doing everything at once, coming out, exploring his sexuality, starting over in a new city, and I was being impatient with him. I'm sorry, I said quietly. You're right, I'm being unfair. He came around the island, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I'm sorry too, I shouldn't have snapped at you, I'm just scared. Of what? Of screwing this up, of not being enough, of letting you down because I'm not where you are yet. I turned in his arms to face him. Hey, look at me. When he did, I cupped his face in my hands. There's no timeline you have to follow, no benchmark you need to hit. We figure this out at your pace, okay? And if you need to take things slower at work or with your family or wherever, that's fine, as long as you're not hiding us from yourself. I'm not, he said firmly. I swear, I'm not ashamed of you, of us, I'm just learning to navigate a world I never thought I'd be part of. I know, I kissed him softly, and I'll be patient, I promise. I don't want you to have to be patient, he said against my lips. I want to be better for you. You're already exactly what I need, I assured him. We held each other in the kitchen as dinner went cold on the counter, and I realized that the messy, complicated, difficult parts, this was where real relationships were built. Not in the honeymoon phase of first kisses and romantic dates, but in the hard conversations and compromises and choosing each other even when it wasn't easy. 2 weeks later, Jake's parents came to visit Seattle. They wanted to see his new city, meet his boyfriend properly, and, I suspected, assess whether this was real or just a phase. Jake was a nervous wreck the morning they were due to arrive. What if they hate me? He asked for the 10th time, adjusting his shirt. What if they think I turned you gay? What if? Jake, I grabbed his shoulders. Breathe, your parents have known me for 7 years, they already like me as your friend, this doesn't change who I am. But it changes who I am, he said quietly. Does it? You're still Jake, still the same person you've always been, you just understand yourself better now. He took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, I can do this. When the doorbell rang, I could feel his tension spike. But then his mother, Patricia, warm and maternal, pulled him into a hug, followed by his father, Tom, clapping him on the back. They greeted me with equal warmth, Patricia kissing my cheek and Tom shaking my hand firmly. "It's good to see you, Ryan," Patricia said, "though I have to say I can't believe you two finally figured it out." Jake and I exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" he asked. Patricia laughed. "Sweetheart, we've known for years that you had feelings for each other, or at least that Ryan had feelings for you. I wasn't sure if you'd reciprocated or were just oblivious." "Oblivious," I supplied helpfully, earning a glare from Jake. "The important thing," Tom said, his voice gruff but kind, "is that you're both happy. Are you happy, son?" "Yeah, Dad," Jake said, reaching for my hand, "really happy." "Then that's all that matters." The rest of the visit went surprisingly well. We showed them around Seattle, had dinner at a nice restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay, and spent an evening at the apartment just talking and laughing. Patricia told embarrassing stories about Jake's childhood, Tom grilled me about my career, and Jake looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in weeks. As they were leaving to head back to their hotel, Patricia pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being patient with him. I know my son, he overthinks everything, worries he's not good enough, takes too long to figure out what's right in front of him, but he loves you. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he talks about you, so thank you for waiting for him to catch up." "I'd wait forever," I said honestly. She smiled. "I don't think you'll have to." After they left, Jake collapsed onto the couch with a relieved sigh. "That went well." "Better than well," I said, sitting next to him. "Your parents are great." "They really are," he pulled me close. "My mom's right, you know, about me being oblivious. I wasted so much time being scared of what I was feeling." "You weren't ready," I said. "That's not wasting time, that's being human." "Sometimes I wish I'd figured it out sooner," he admitted. "Think of all the time we could have had." "But we have now," I pointed out, "and all the tomorrows after." He kissed me slow and deep and whispered against my lips, "I'm falling so hard for you." "Falling?" I pulled back to look at him. "I thought you already fell." "I thought so too," he said, "but every day I fall a little more, deeper, harder, until you're all I can think about." My heart felt too big for my chest. "Jake." "I love you," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm in love with you. I think I have been for a long time, I just didn't have the words for it, but now I do, and I need you to know I love you, Ryan Chen." I'd imagined hearing those words from him so many times, but reality was infinitely better than any fantasy. "I love you too," I said, my voice breaking slightly, "so much." We stayed on the couch for hours after that, just holding each other, occasionally exchanging soft kisses and quieter words. Outside, Seattle went about its business, but inside our apartment it was just us, two people who'd finally found their way to each other. Another month passed in a blur of happiness. Jake got the job and came out to his new coworkers within the first week, which made me absurdly proud. We established routines, inside jokes, the comfortable intimacy of a couple who genuinely liked spending time together. But we still hadn't taken the physical relationship beyond kissing and some heated make-out sessions. It wasn't for lack of desire, the tension between us was constant, simmering just below the surface. But Jake was nervous about that final step and I wasn't going to push him. Until one night when he pushed himself. We'd been watching a movie, curled up together on the couch as usual, when Jake started kissing my neck. Not unusual, but there was an intensity to it that made my breath catch. "Jake," I managed as his hand slid under my shirt. "I want this," he said against my skin. "I want you, I'm ready." "Are you sure?" I pulled back to look at him. "Because there's no rush, we can wait as long as you need." "I've been waiting 7 years," he said with a crooked smile. "I think that's long enough." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." Yeah. He took my face in his hands. "Ryan, I am nervous, terrified actually, but I trust you and I want to be with you in every way possible, so yes, I'm sure." What followed was simultaneously the most nerve-wracking and most beautiful experience of my life. Jake was hesitant at first, uncertain, but also eager and surprisingly confident once we got started. We took our time, communicating constantly, laughing when things were awkward, sighing when they were perfect. Afterward, we lay tangled together in his bed, our bed really, since I hadn't slept in my own room in weeks, and Jake traced idle patterns on my chest. He started. "Yeah," I agreed. "Why didn't we do this sooner?" I laughed because you needed to be ready. I was so nervous it would be weird, he admitted, that I wouldn't know what to do, that I'd disappoint you. Jake, you could never disappoint me. I know that now. He propped himself up to look at me, his eyes serious. This is it for me, you're it. I don't need to date other guys or explore or figure anything else out, because I already know it's you, it's always been you. That's a big statement, I said carefully. You've only been out a few months. I don't care, some people take years to find their person. I'm lucky enough that mine was right in front of me all along. He kissed me softly. I'm done running from us. I want everything with you, the future, the mess, all of it. Everything, I echoed. Everything. I pulled him down for another kiss, deeper this time, trying to pour all my feelings into it. When we broke apart, I said, move into my room. Officially, let's make this a one-bedroom apartment. He grinned, trying to save on rent. Trying to fall asleep next to you every night and wake up to your face every morning. Well, when you put it like that, he pretended to consider it. Okay, but I'm bringing my Star Wars posters. Absolutely not. They're limited edition. They're going in storage. You're a monster. You love me anyway. I really do, he said, and his voice was so full of affection it made my eyes sting. We spent the rest of the night making plans, talking about the future, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Where we wanted to travel, whether we'd stay in Seattle or move somewhere else eventually, what our dream home would look like. It felt monumental and mundane all at once, the way the best relationships do. 6 months after Jake showed up at my door with 3 suitcases and a broken heart, we were hosting a housewarming party in the apartment that had truly become ours. We'd rearranged furniture, hung art, no Star Wars posters, though Jake claimed I'd crushed his dreams, and filled the space with evidence of our life together. Books shelved haphazardly, photos on every surface, 2 coffee mugs perpetually in the sink. Our friends from college had flown in, Mark, Sophia, and Jenna, who'd been placing bets on when we'd finally get together since sophomore year. Jake's coworkers came, along with my boss and her wife. Even Sarah sent a card congratulating us, which felt like the final piece of closure on that chapter. I stood in the kitchen watching Jake hold court in the living room, telling some animated story that had everyone laughing, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This beautiful, funny, occasionally oblivious man loved me, had chosen me, was building a life with me. You look like a man in love, Patricia said, appearing at my elbow with a knowing smile. I am, I admitted, very much so. Good, she patted my arm. You're good for each other, you balance him out, keep him from spiraling with anxiety, and he brings out a lightness in you I don't think was there before. He makes me happy, I said simply. I can see that? She glanced over at Jake, who was now gesturing wildly, nearly knocking over someone's drink. He's going to propose, probably sooner than you think. My heart did a somersault. He told you that. A mother knows, she winked. Don't act surprised when he does it, and for heaven's sake say yes. He'll worry himself sick if you make him wait for an answer. After she walked away, I couldn't stop smiling. Marriage, a future, everything I'd ever wanted with the person I'd never thought I could have. Later that night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up, Jake pulled me into his arms on the now cleared living room floor. This was perfect, he said. Thank you for organizing everything. We organized it together, I corrected. You did most of the work, he kissed my forehead. You always do most of the work and then pretend you didn't. That's not true. It absolutely is, he grew serious. Can I tell you something? Always. I used to be terrified of the future, of making the wrong choices, of ending up stuck in a life that wasn't really mine. But now, he tightened his arms around me, now I can't wait, because whatever comes next, we're facing it together, and that makes everything less scary. Even the Star Wars poster ban, I teased. Even that devastating loss, he said solemnly, then he grinned. Though I'm staging a rebellion, 1 poster, just 1, in the 2nd bedroom when we eventually get a bigger place. We'll negotiate, I promised. We swayed together to imaginary music, the apartment quiet around us, and I thought about how strange life was. How a year ago I'd been alone in this city, convinced that Jake would never be mine. How he'd shown up broken and lost, and somehow we'd found our way to this, to joy, to partnership, to love. Hey, Jake said softly, where'd you go? Just thinking about how lucky I am, I said. I'm the lucky one. Let's just agree we're both lucky. Deal, he kissed me sweet and lingering. I love you, Ryan. I love you too. And as we stood there in our apartment, our home, I knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. The start of the life we'd build together with all its messiness and joy and perfect imperfection. Jake Morrison had moved in and things had gotten real, the best kind of real. The kind worth waiting for, the kind that lasted.